We're ready.
So, let's get started with a roll call. Renee? Mr. Walk.
Here.
Here. Mr. Sutton.
Here.
Ms. Morgan.
Here.
Here. Thank you. Yes, we're good. Oh. Yes. Okay. Let's get started. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, there's the only thing on the agenda for the vacancy board today, but before we get to that, needs their notification, which is that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Vacancy Board are electronically recorded, filed, and posted on Board Docs for the public access. All right? So let's get to our first order of business here, which is the vacancy board minutes, which I believe everyone received a copy of. Yeah, there you go.
I'll make a motion to approve the vacancy board meetings as presented this evening. I actually have a comment to make before we go and do it in discussion first.
Sure.
Thank you. So just as a note, Sunshine Act, the minutes that we take for any meetings should be detailed so that the board and the public can review later to determine what happened in the meeting. And as I reviewed these meeting minutes, I just wanted to review with this board. I just had a comment in light of that need for accurate meeting minutes. So I'd like to review the draft comments. So this is what's contained in our draft. There's a fairly good-sized paragraph, starting with Chairman Champagne explained that she had recommended Jamal Ahmed and that the other candidate was Ben Long. She explained her reason that he stood up to her was that he was the only candidate who spoke of South Whitehall's diverse demographics in terms of age, race, and background, and he specifically said that's a good thing. He spoke about wanting to make sure all of these voices within our township would be heard, and that all these voices are to be represented in government. Because of that thought and voicing that without being asked or led to that comment, she feels he would bring a diversity to the South Whitehall Board of Commissioners, which it lacks right now. Chairman Champagne explained, in my world, we call it a culture hat. He adds that, I think it is much needed, that he brings the ability to speak for a diverse range of citizens in our township, not just for a local few. She went on to say because of that is why she votes yes for Ben Long. So that was the content of Chairman Champagne's comments, and I wanted to review with this board the comments of the commissioners. Commissioner Walt recommended Lee Salt. Commissioner Sutton recommended Ben Long. Commissioner Kelly recommended Andrew Flagg. Commissioner Morgan recommended Ben Long. Chairman Champagne recommended Jamal Ahmed. I have to ask myself, and I'll ask this full board, if that's sufficient. This vacancy board has not met this township in over 20 years. Maybe even more is what the recollection of the solicitor was. We also did not include in these a single citizen attending or any comments that were made, which is typically part of meeting minutes as well. So I guess I have a question in the form of a comment. does what I just read of the comments of the commissioners suffice to give a picture in the future to someone who's wondering what happened in 2021 with the vacancy board? Will they understand what any of the commissioners thought or proposed? It's just not contained here, and I don't feel that these meeting minutes accurately explain or represent the actions that were taken in that meeting.
So, my understanding is that for, meeting minutes, we use Robert's rules, which usually means that we only document, like if there's like a decision or, an objection, there's not much details, especially nowadays where we have a full recording. So my thought to your concern that, hey, would people know exactly what happened, is that they would go to the recording to get like the full rundown. In fact, I think the recording can be printed out.
I don't know, I don't know that, but this is the official meeting recording that we have in writing. And if it said Chairman Champagne nominates and votes for, then that would make sense, it would be in keeping with Robert's rules, which I don't believe this board ever, as a vacancy board, discussed whether we would use Robert's rules as our template, because this is very, very different and separate from the Board of Commissioners.
I agree that it's different than the Board of Commissioners, but my understanding, and I may be wrong, is that it's used across not just the Board of Commissioners, but the other boards that are in the township. So my understanding is kind of it's like all we go by Robert's rules. And then just a second.
Just as a correction to that, I do serve on the planning commission. Our meeting minutes are very lengthy with all discussion of almost every member and the public. So it is board specific.
And this board did not use the Board of Commissioners, which is the separate body, did not use Robert's rules until, I'm going to say, approximately last April, when a motion was made to use Robert's rules, and that was adopted.
I mean, maybe it was discussed, and I've been attending, and we see that they've been using Robert's rules.
Now, there's many previous meeting minutes that are effusive in documenting people's statements, especially on certain subjects like the campus renovation. There's 5 pages worth of information of who said what on campus renovation. So, Solicitor Later has made it clear in some of our email discussions that the vacancy board is a separate body, and this body has never formally adopted Robert's rules. I have some similar thoughts to Commissioner Kelly. In fact, I wrote this as a motion. So the motion I would make is that the vacancy board table the meeting minutes until the reasons why the 5 vacancy board members nominated their candidates is included in the minutes, much as your reasoning is included. The minutes include your reasoning on how you eventually decided to vote for Ben.
And that's the point I wanted to make with what Diane was saying, that she asked that, and I see what you're saying, where they have this, and then my reasoning is included at the end, and my thought was the reason that was the case is because I was deciding.
Well, I think we should give I want to continue.
Sure.
Okay. So your reasoning is in there. And as Diane said, the following vacancy board members' comments are not in there. Myself or Lee Stoll, Joe Simmons for Ben Long, Diane Kelly's for Andy Flagg, Tori Morgan's for Ben Long, Keisha Champagne's for Jamal Ahmed, and one of my main points, which Diane Kelly hasn't made, but this vacancy board should demonstrate a respect for all of the candidates by including the reasons why they were nominated, considering all the effort that the candidates put forward into submitting their applications and resumes and by being interviewed. I believe we need to respect everyone, all the citizens, but these are the candidates who came forward, and they were the top 4 or 5 out of the 9 who were interviewed. And my other point, which I think Diane Kelly has touched on, we're here to serve the citizens. We should also include the citizen statements, and we should make the information accessible in the meeting minutes. This will turn out to be 2 pages. They have to go look for a 2-page document, and everything's in there, as opposed to making them go look for a 1-hour video to acquire that information. So this matter, it appears as if we're talking about a meeting minute decision, but I don't look at it that way. It's really about how the township should respect the candidates that come forward to serve for the government, and how we respect the people who come to the meeting to speak out and provide their.
I have a problem understanding what you mean by respect.
How about start with common decency for anyone who came here and put forward, first of all, decided to run, and then put the effort to write a resume and to fill out an application, and then to prepare for an interview, however long that took them, to undergo the interview, for 45 minutes, whereupon we thank them for their service even coming forward. I think that was done respectfully by us. We need to finish being respectful by putting a paragraph in here why we sold them on and the other 2 members, Andrew Flagg and Jamal Ahmed, were considered to be, in the time worth considering. Much as Keisha has written her paragraph, no issue with that paragraph being included, except that it's inconsistent with everybody else's nomination comments being included. And how about some common sense? How about some common sense? Why is anybody against adding these paragraphs? What could be the reason?
Yeah, well, I believe that the board already is permanent. It's all recorded. I think the respect that you were suggesting was an appreciation that each one of the commissioners, to all the people that came up front of us, thank them, we appreciated their services. I'm not sure what else you're actually suggesting.
I'm suggesting adding the paragraph that I spoke for Lisa, Diane Kelly spoke for Andrew Flagg. You and Tori spoke for Ben Long, and Keisha spoke for Jamal Ahmed. It's a simple matter to ask Tracy to go add those paragraphs. In fact, we've already submitted my paragraph for Lisa, and I was prompted.
Let me just ask, is it different than what's on record?
I guess I have a question, Mr. Sutton. So these meeting minutes take a minute to download and maybe 5 minutes to read. The recording of this meeting was, I believe, almost an hour. So it's certainly a convenience for the citizens. And again, we're talking 10 years from now, the vacancy board might be called again, maybe next year, maybe 20 years. If someone wants to say, hey, what happened in 2021? Do we expect them to go find a recording somewhere and sit down for a full hour to listen to it? Or would we say, go online, print this out, it'll take you 2 minutes to print it, 5 minutes to read it, and you have all the information you need? Are we really going to argue over putting our statements? I guess I would ask you all to answer Commissioner Wolf's question. What is the objection to add a paragraph that we each chose a candidate and the reasons for it? I for the life of me can't understand why that's a hindrance to this board.
So at this point, I don't have no objection. I'm still in the discussion because this is the first time you're having this discussion. Number one, I do disagree that it's disrespectful. I guess you've always talked about your experience in the business world, and that's where I have experience with it. This is usually how minutes are done, especially with interviews, and you document when there's a deciding. the deciding vote, stuff like that, so it's in line with that, so there's disagreement there. As far as having it printed out, like I said, I would expect 10 years from now, they would get the video, they would do the voice to text, they print it out, or if they want, or they fast forward through the video or whatever, you know. So I don't think there's a big difference there. So those are just in this discussion, the disagreements for the record.
Does the board not have the capability to?
Any recording.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have to be a.
Like your computer.
I have a question. I'll ask this question in this context, but honestly, I have this question for every time we get into a discussion about these meetings.
First time.
So,
Just wanted to point that out.
so I'll ask you for this case. Who made the decision to include Keisha Champagne's reasons for selecting Ben Long and to exclude the other vacancy board reasons for nominating her candidates? Who made the decision?
Before that question is answered, I did want to point out, because you may have just misspoke about, like, I gave my paragraph. I didn't have anything written, so it was just whatever was said at the time. Just
All right, that's fair. But, so in this case, who made the decision to include this paragraph and exclude what the other people said?
I do the minutes, and exactly what Keisha had explained, since this was mentioned and gone over several times in several meetings. You know, all of that information was repeated. It was recorded. The recording is 100% transparent. I mean, you can't get more transparent than a recording. So the information is there. Her decision was the deciding factor. So that's how I did that. You know, it's the way minutes are normally done.
I see it quite differently. I see this is a very different meeting. It's a very different meeting. There's a lot of, information given out about candidates and interview process. I think it's very important that instead of translating, having Tracy translate all that information and putting it into a paragraph, which I'm sure would be very condensing of information, it's much better to have the audio and listen. If somebody's interested in knowing why one of us made a recommendation on any one individual, listen to the tape. There is nothing more transparent than that tape, and that's why we do it. So in that regard, I think the way the minutes are developed now makes perfect sense. It follows the same procedure we do every other time we do our minutes. And then also going back to that tape is the way to listen to what people actually said and not interpreting it into a different paragraph. So I think the minutes should stand as they are, and if people are interested in getting more detail, we listen to the tape just like we would do.
So I don't think that you can choose a certain paragraph or you can choose something and put it right. You can choose something, I can choose something else that no into. So I don't think you want to do it.
Well, I'll just make a quick comment on the last 2 points. So I think you know me by now. If I'm making a statement like this, on an important issue like this, I write it ahead of time. I read it practically verbatim. And in this case, I went back and I listened to the video and I corrected every single minor word change that if I spoke it differently than the paper, I already did that. It's not that different.
You just answered your own question, though. It's all there in the video. If anybody wants to listen to it, it's all verbatim.
Yeah.
It's the most transparent way you can be. So why?
It's there 1 or 2 weeks after the meeting. Let's get together in 10 years and you go find this video online or on our IT system.
So,
In 10 years, the process might be totally different.
I don't want to get on.
So
Okay,
is there a motion by?
that's what I was asking, is that I believe, Mr. Wolf, did you have a motion? Oh, you made a motion. Okay.
So Tori made a somebody could do somebody can be the parliamentarian. Here's what they did. Tori made a motion. Nobody seconded. I made a
He
motion.
just seconded.
Okay.
All right. So, Tori made a motion, Joe second, any more discussion or comment from any members of the board?
Now from the board, make it a public.
Yeah, just want to make sure we. Okay, questions or discussions from members of the board?
No. Like nothing else. Dave Kennedy, 3727 Pheasant Hill Drive. Since I got involved in South Whitehall and looking at board of commissioners and other meetings that I'm involved with public safety, I've gone online to South Whitehall Township, as Mike said, through their IT, whatever, to try to find previous meetings that I wanted to listen to. It is virtually a nightmare in this township to find anything that's been done in the past. You know, if you think that I'm going to spend hours looking for a tape or a video of one night's meeting, where I can go into a file that's dated and pull out 2 or 3 or 4 pages to read, that's the way to do it. Not go through some video. I'm just to try to find it.
So,
It's really difficult.
asking Mr. Kennedy, you're saying the paper minutes are easier to find?
Absolutely,
than-
because you can go by the date. Usually they're in a binder, you know, under that particular heading, vacancy board, planning commission, public safety, you know, specifically, and then you look for the date or dates thereof, and you can find them. But to try to find something in this township through the internet system on old VOC meetings that have been recorded, that I tried to listen to, is nearly impossible. It is not an easy job. So why are you making things difficult for the public when you can pull up a sheet or 2 or 3 and read it? You're done, 5 minutes, boom, you're done. Yeah, and I'd like to make another comment, this is off the subject. When Diane Kelly speaks, everybody out here can hear her very clearly. When Mike speaks, it's not bad. Joe, when you speak, we can't hear half of what you say. Okay, I mean, if you can speak into the mic, or Tori is a case in point where you can hear her. I'm just saying, okay, if somebody doesn't tell you, you don't know. I'm just saying it's extremely difficult to hear when some of you guys speak. Mine is extremely.
Can you hear me?
You're better.
Thank you.
But, okay, thank you.
So can you hear anything I said?
That's better. That's better right now.
Well, hear anything I said before, or do you want me to repeat?
No, you don't have to repeat it, Joe.
I just have a point of reference. He reminded me of a citizen reached out to me late last week asking for some planning commission meeting minutes. And I looked on Word docs from earlier this year. They were not posted. I emailed a staff member in community development and asked and was told that they needed to be uploaded. So I waited and finally they were there and I was able to pass them on to the resident who was looking for them. Just as an example. They are not always necessarily easy to find. Neither are, just to his point, and thank you for jogging my memory, I was able to get those over to the resident, but it shouldn't take a commissioner to intervene to look for meeting minutes.
Yeah.
It is a tedious process at times. I understand there are probably various reasons why that is, but I personally have gone back as a commissioner to try to understand, you know, a certain item, and I'm looking back to try to find minutes to find what was talked about. I don't have time to listen to the 3-hour meeting to find out what was discussed about this land development. I go to the minutes, I get a snapshot of what happened, who said what was going on, and I have a fairly decent grasp of what was discussed in that meeting, and I think that's the spirit of the meeting minutes should be. But anyway, that's just my comment.
Yeah, I think two things.
I agree with what you said, but the minutes that we had on paper was a guideline to go into, like, be able to go into on that, can you hear me now? So, you know, the paper minutes is a guideline for us to be people, for us, the public, to go into the internet, find out what's on the team. So,
Actually, I believe
it's
by
not
law,
necessary to go through all
paper document is what's required by law. We do the audio as an add-on, which is a wonderful thing. But again, if you're trying to.
Is that something we have clarity on, if the paper document is what's required and not the?
Attorney Vader, could you speak to that based on the Sunshine Act and Township Code, we're required to keep a minute book?
We are required to keep minutes in a location designated by the township, sometimes referred to as a minute book. Of course, that dates back to the pre-electronic days, but minutes must be maintained, and the Sunshine Act does require every public agency, including the township board of commissions, maintain minutes of their actions.
Thank you.
The level of detail.
Up to the board.
Board decide.
Thank you. I think, I mean, and this is obviously outside the purview of this board, obviously there's a problem for people to find the information sometimes, but that, this board doesn't talk about, can't do anything about that, that's private citizens' possessions. I think about the ease of which one is easier, from what I'm hearing, is, to me, a matter of personal opinion. You know, there's some things that, there's some people who reading through something, that's easier to look at it. There's some people that I know in my life where going to the video and fast forwarding through is easier. So for me, that's a personal preference. And I understand that some people easily look through the 2 pages, and for some people that's not. That's 50-50.
I still have question or an issue with the fact is that what do we choose to put in the minutes and what not. Again, Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Walker both want to put comments that are about certain applicants that came in. But if you go back in the minutes, I may, or somebody else may decide to put something totally different. So now we can potentially have a minutes that's going to be as thick as the video.
Commissioner said, let's keep this discussion to this meeting and this subject. As Commissioner Kelly said, it's the vacancy board, and it's the first time it met, and we don't know when the last time was. And we met to select the commissioner. It's one of the most important things we could possibly do. All right? This isn't an ordinary meeting. This isn't a discussion about garbage totes or whatever other ordinary subject you want to talk about. This is a subject about why sitting commissioners nominated citizens who came forward to serve as a commissioner. All right? I think you need to separate this from all the other minute discussions we've ever had. This is a matter of significant importance, and that's why since we made these Robert's rules, I haven't fought on meeting minutes. If there's a correction needed, I'd like it corrected. Commissioner Kelly and I, most of the time, we make a motion in a second to accept the meeting minutes. We haven't made a big deal about it. But we are tonight because of the subject matter.
Which is, in my opinion, all the more reason that the audio and the video is the way to go to be the most transparent. If you want to hear word for word what somebody's opinion or answer to questions were, listen to the video. You wouldn't want to transcribe.
If I use your logic for the amount of time that this is taken to discuss here, if it wouldn't take much longer for Tracy to go find like 5 statements, transcribe them properly, and to my point, put them in the meeting minutes and are available on the video.
I'm always cautious about saying how long it will take someone since it's their job. I don't know, maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's an hour.
I'm an applicant. I didn't say it earlier. I've gone to videos, and first of all, I have to find the right video. Even when I know I'm on the right video, I know exactly what I'm looking for, and it's 3.5 hours long. Take 15 minutes before I find it, and it would be much shorter on video.
I understand that. That's understandable. Any other comments? I wanted to make sure any other, yes. Oh,
Yeah, I'm Jacob Roth, 299 Wicket Road. I guess my main concern is there was a motion made or a suggestion made to include candidate, or to include commissioner statements about their chosen candidate in the meeting minutes, and it faces opposition. There's the excuse that it inconveniences the staff. There's an excuse about Robert's rules, which has not been adopted by the vacancy board, and there's the excuse that's available for the video. But I think the one point which hasn't been talked about enough is why not? Why not include it? Why not submit to the public, or for the good of all of us here listening online, for you to have a full record of the meeting? Why not? Why not? God forbid the vacancy board acts under their authority and ask the staff to do their jobs and include the statements. It's not that complicated.
is there a question to?
No, it's
Okay.
a question. And my comment is, just do it. It's not that hard. It's been done in the past before we recorded meetings and posted them. So get it done now. Why is this such a debate on whether or not there should be a full accounting of a meeting online? Is there any harm that people might go back and see what Commissioner Walt recommended, or what Commissioner Morgan recommended? Is there any harm in that? I certainly don't think so. If someone does think that there is harm in that, that's a separate issue.
Thank you, Mr. Roth.
I take,
Answer the question in your statement of, is there opposition against that? In my mind, there isn't. I don't think there is opposition against having a full record. In my mind, I think that there already is a full record. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have a full record and we shouldn't go back. So in my mind, there already is a full record. So that's the.
Well, that's a long time left. The full record would be, this process was advertised. I think solicitors, laid out the process. They could go through each candidate, each commissioner would recommend a candidate. Reasons for their candidate. They basically get to pitch their candidate. Then there would be a motion statement. A full record would be including the statement. That's a full record.
So you mean written?
Okay. Written record, as required by the Sunshine Act. And then the second point, I think Commissioner Keller brought something, I noticed there were several public comments at the vacancy board meeting, and Commissioner Keller, they weren't included in the minutes?
There's no notation at the end of the minutes that there was even any public in attendance or that anyone made any
For
statements whatsoever.
example, in previous board and commissioner meetings, if I've spoken the following minutes, my name and address would be posted, which I'm required to give in the meeting for the minutes. That was, no names were even listed.
There's nothing, no.
Then that's not a full count of minutes, and I agree this minutes should be tabled until you can direct staff.
And just for a visual, I forgot to mention this, there's an entire page of Mr. Zager's comments. An entire 8.5 by 11 of Mr. Zager's comments. So I don't understand why commissioners don't get that paragraph.
I think that's just instructions.
Well, no, it was talking about the vacancy board and the appropriateness of whether or not the vacancy board position was existing. All of that was here in very detailed, a full page.
And I guess the board has to be consistent. Either all commissioners, or members of the board statements are included, including the champagnes, or none of them are included. It's either a roadmap, like Commissioner Sutton said, watch the video, and it's fair comments, or all comments must be included. You can't.
Commissioner Kelly's point, yes, there's a full page of Solicitor Zager's comments. I suppose we haven't mentioned it because it's, legal information, but it's available on the video. Why does a page worth of Solicitor Zager's comments have to be included when it's the law and it's in the video and we can go find it on the video?
Any other comments? Did you?
I just wanted to thank you for champagne because said it best, I feel. It's a different way to gather information. Some people gather their information from the minutes, some people gather their information from the video. And there is discrepancy with both. So that vacancy board is you, along with five commissioners, and each one of you should be represented with what you say, even if it's a short phrase, all represented because you're all part of that. As for video and as for the minutes, there are still some citizens who can't appear the video. I know people have asked me, I say to me, easy, go to the YouTube channel, or there's nothing up there since it's two.
Well, we will show you when we start the public meeting, there's two clicks to get to the meeting.
Thank you.
So
So
that
I
is
can
the
help
process.
find it too.
Randy can demonstrate when we go to public meeting.
Thank you. But since it's really important to bring members here, attention, because there are people who are struggling with that, you know, get their information.
Thank you.
I think what Monica said is exactly what I was referring to. Interpret things, you know, when you're interpreting things and putting them in the minutes, you interpret them one way. There is no interpretation with an audio. It is what it is. You can't be more transparent. If somebody wants all the detail and wants to know what somebody's opinion was or what the recommendation was, go to the audio.
If I may comment, please, for the board. I'm not going to resolve what the board elects to include by way of measure of detail. That's up to you to decide. The minutes as they stand now go beyond the detail required by the Sunshine Act. But Mr. Roth made a comment that triggered a point that I think is important. And as I look at the meeting minutes, and he had noted that there were several residents who spoke and they're not identified here. I do believe that under the Sunshine Act, there is a requirement that any resident speaks to the official matters in front of the board, where important may be, should be identified, and at least the topic, if not the detail of their statement being mentioned. I do not see that in this particular draft of minutes. Therefore, I do think that under the Sunshine Act, it would be appropriate for that to be.
So I will modify my motion to include the residents' names and addresses and required information as described by Attorney Zager, but not to the full transcript, adding that additional information that
I'm sorry, I actually have a copy of the Sunshine Act here, section 706, under minutes of meetings. Item number 4, so the names of all citizens who appeared officially and the subject of their testimony shall be included in the minutes. So not just a name, it will be the subject of their testimony.
So on that point, normally talking about all our meetings, that is not happening. We can have 30 people come to a meeting and speak, and maybe 2 are identified by name, and maybe the topic is mentioned. It's become customary since we adopted this Robert's rules that sometimes it just says the public made statements on this topic, period. Sometimes you get a name, sometimes you get the name and the topic. But it might only be a handful of people out of the many people who spoke. So that's probably an adjustment that I haven't gotten solicitors later.
So we have a motion on the floor with a minor modification to add in resident information.
Second motion. With no.
Can we take a vote? Renee? Mr. Walker?
No,
Ms. Kelly?
No, I will not approve these minutes because I do not include the comments of the commissioners at the vacancy board meeting.
Mr. Sutton?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Ms. Champagne?
Yes. Okay, so the motion carries. The next thing on the agenda is courtesy of the floor. Are there any other comments? Or the vacancy board? At this point?
I'll make a motion.
Motion carries. Oh, go. Sorry. Roll call vote. Sorry, please.
Motion to adjourn.
See?
Yes.
Ms. Kowski? Aye. Mr. Sutton? Ms. Morgan? Aye. Ms. Champagne?
Aye. Meeting adjourned.